Me and my friend Nathaniel are going to explain to you all federalism, which is chapter 3 in AP Government. First off, we're going to start talking about the three systems of government as a basis of learning what federalism is. First of all, you have a unitary system of government, which involves one central government um, containing most of the power. They have most of the authority over states or any other governments in the sphere. Then you have confederal government, which is where many of the state governments have the state governments have most of the power. When there's a very weak central government or a weaker central government, and then there's a federal system of government, which where both states and federal government have about the same power, and they share the power when one does not have more than the other. The United States has the federal system, and they have this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it retains traditions within the states. Also, it keeps the power local and allows for national government to handle their like the bigger problems, where the states handle the more specific things. Um, the federal system allows for states to be informed on political issues better than if it was not better than in a unitary or confederal system. Also, another reason for federalism is so that it brings the government closer to the people. That's one of the bigger reasons why. And the last reason is it's almost impossible to allocate all parts of government in one geographical area. So it's a more logical idea to spread it out between both state and federal government.
The division of powers is an important part of federalism. There are three types of powers listed in the Constitution: powers of the national government, powers of the state government, and prohibited powers. Examples of powers of the national government include enumerated powers, which are powers expressly given to the national government, which include coining money, declaring war, and other things. The elastic clause gives the national government the power to do whatever is necessary to fulfill their expressed powers. Inherent powers are powers that aren't expressed or implied, but that the national government has, such as acquiring land and doing things that only the national government can do by dealing with other nations, such as states can't negotiate with other nations. Powers of the states include anything that the 10th Amendment gives them. The 10th Amendment says that if powers are not given to the national government and are not taken away from the states in the Constitution, that they are reserved for the states. The states also have police powers, which allow them to work for the benefit of the people and do what is necessary to keep the people in well-being. Concurrent powers are powers that are not or that are implied in the Constitution and are shared between the national government and the state governments. The Supremacy Clause says that the national government has final say over all governments in controversial circumstances.
A big concept to understand when talking about federalism is how it's changed in our own government in the past couple hundred of years. Back when our system of government was new, and there was more of an emphasis on dual federalism, which means each part of government, state and federal, operated in its own sphere and didn't really intervene with each other very much. But ever since the New Deal passed, FDR's New Deal in the 1930s, our federal system of government has changed more towards a cooperative system of government, where both the federal and state governments act together on a lot of issues, and they act cooperatively in making legislation and trying to provide for the citizens together.
To explain dual federalism and cooperative federalism, we're bringing on Little Debbie. This strawberry shortcake roll, as seen here, can kind of describe what cooperative federalism means. As you can see, like the red would symbolize the federal government, and the white would symbolize the state governments, and they work together pretty much, or they are combined and work pretty much in the same, work with each other on the same things. And then we have the chocolate chip cakes. And these can be a representation of dual federalism, because you can see that there are the two separate own spheres of maybe the federal government, with the state government as the cream filling operating in its own sphere.
In the court case Gibbons versus Ogden, Ogden had a license from the state of New York to operate a ferry boat between the waters of New York and New Jersey. Gibbons had a license from the United States to operate a ferry boat, and Gibbons decided he was going to be the competitor of Ogden. Ogden then sued Gibbons for not having a license from New York to operate in that area. The court ruled in the case in the favor of Ogden, saying that Gibbons didn't have a right from New York to operate in the waters. So Gibbons then took that to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled in the favor of Gibbons, saying that the United States government has power to regulate commerce that is interstate or between states, and that states can only govern commerce that is intrastate only in their state. McCulloch versus Maryland. The state of Maryland tried to tax a national bank, and the cashier, McCulloch, refused to pay the tax. The state of Maryland took the case to court, and the court ruled that the state of Maryland had the right to tax that. So the bank took it to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court ruled that the national government could charter a bank if it was for the better of the people, and that the states could not tax an arm of the national government.
This led to bigger government.
The Civil War amendments that came after the separation of the Union and Confederate, caused by the separation of powers leading towards state powers being higher, then led to the Civil War. And after the Civil War, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment determined who was a citizen and gave all citizens equal rights under law. And the 15th Amendment expanded voting rights to all men.
Where do I turn this thing off at? Where do I...